It's Authors Revealed, and I'm Becky Anderson. I can't tell you how long I've been waiting for this event to come, but we have Bryan Ogg, one of the greatest people who knows Naperville history like no other person, is with his new book. It's about Naperville. It's called Naperville, A Brief History. Everyone who is a citizen of this great city should have this book. Well, Bryan, congrats. The day's finally here.
Yes.
The book is out on shelves, and here at Anderson's, we are so excited because we're going to be hosting your launch event tonight.
Yes, I'm very excited. Naperville has become my adopted home, and to launch a book from my adopted home and at Anderson's, a very well-established bookstore, is just an incredible honor for me.
Yeah, well, it's an honor for us because we have been waiting for a book like this for a very long time.
40 years.
40 years. So I know this is not your first book, and you've written before.
Yes.
But how does this one feel? How does it feel to have it finally out there?
Well, this is like a big baby.
Yeah,
This is almost like twins.
Yeah.
I have written before. I've written for the Peoria Historical Society. I've written independently. I've published independently. But to work with a national press and to work to write about a town that is truly incredible and has incredible history has truly been an honor. And I've just met so many neat people and seen so many neat collections that it's wonderful.
So we haven't had any book even similar to this since 1975, when Genevieve Towsley's book came out, and that was based a lot on her columns, the Grapevine.
Yes.
So, but this to me is a real history, and that book has a lot of sentimental value to me because it was one of those books that came out and everybody in the family had to get one, so we all have one. You know?
Right.
But and that was a long time ago. So there's been a lot of history since 1975.
There has been a lot of history,
right.
and a history that's not been told. Even books that have been written about Naperville after 1975 have touched on subjects, but they really haven't been a comprehensive history.
Right.
And this book cannot be a be-all, end-all. I mean, there's just a lot that's happened. So it is a brief history, but I really want it to be that welcome mat to people who come to Naperville.
Yeah. So what was the spark or the germs that started to grow for you to write this history?
Well, more than 6 years ago, well, almost nearly 10 years ago, after I've moved to Naperville, people said, "When are you going to write a book? When are you going to write a book? You know so much." And it just never was in the cards. It was just never in the timeline. So when I was approached to write a book after, having been a while in my profession, I thought, now is the time. And especially with Nichols Library coming down, or the potential threat of it coming down, that preservation in Naperville, we're losing a lot of our physical history. Right. And I thought this is a perfect time. And then coincidentally, it's the bicentennial of the state. So in a way, this is a birthday present.
Yeah, and it's a great birthday present. And I have always said, and many people say in Naperville, that you are the quintessential expert on Naperville history.
Wow.
No, absolutely. No one knows as much as you do about this city and its past. So.
But I've had the privilege of learning. And I've said this to people ask me, do you live here? Have you lived here? Is your family from here?
Yeah.
And I've said this more than once. I mean, God gave us 2 ears. And so I listen a lot, and I take it in, and I'm a storyteller. So I like to tell.
Well, talking about storytelling, I thought this book read so easily in that narrative more. There's some histories that are so dry. It's facts, but this read in a really wonderful narrative way. It was easily readable, I kept hearing you in my head.
Oh, yes.
And when I've heard you speak, different lectures or talking about certain things, but it's just like having a conversation with you reading the book.
Well, thank you. And that, I think, is one of the hallmarks of my writing, and when I used to teach history at the community college level, I bring it home. It's people know me, and then they understand what I'm saying, and they enjoy history again. They are no longer afraid of it.
Yeah. And there's so many histories you can read, and the ones that I truly get more out of are the ones that are in a narrative more format, that build the story and that they bring in the characters that sort of drive the storyline, but you're absorbing so much and you don't even realize it, but it's just great storytelling.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So knowing that this is out, and a lot of your friends, and I know a lot of them will be here tonight,
Yes.
a lot of your fans, but what are you hearing, when you were putting this book together and the people knew it was coming out, what are you hearing so far about what people hear about the book? Since we just got it in. Actually.
Right. Well, they're very anxious.
Yeah.
They're buying 2 and 3 copies for family members and for friends abroad. They weren't really asking me, what am I going to say, what am I not going to say? They all asked the question, what do we know, what do we not know?
Yeah.
I said, you have to read the book.
Right. No spoilers.
No
Not the
spoilers.
stuff you don't know already. But I love that Mayor Pradel did the foreword to this book before he died, and he did it last May, and before he passed away in September. So what was that like, talking to him before this and having him write that foreword?
Well, Mayor Pradel and I, ever since I came to Naperville, we've had a really fun relationship. I mean, it started off as I was an employee with the city, and he was the mayor, and there would be different history questions, and we would bump into each other at different places. But over the years, he took me in really as an adopted son of Naperville.
Yeah, wonderful.
And for him I gave him the first chapter and the last chapter of the book in manuscript form, so that he would get an idea of what he would write about or what he would endorse.
Yeah.
And he liked it. He was very impressed with it, and I think his foreword speaks of that.
I thought it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So talking about Mayor Pradel and his influence, he was in the same high school class as my aunt. She used to help him with his homework.
Oh,
He
yeah.
always would say that sort of. But what is his influence? Because he had, his whole life, he was in service to this city.
Well, and I really tried to promote that in this book, that really 20 years, when you speak of Naperville anywhere in the state,
Oh, for sure.
Pradel comes up. And at his memorial, I mean, just the lines, the hours of lines, and the people that he touched, his influence was in every aspect of Naperville, culturally, spiritually, physically. And there will be no equal to Mayor Pradel as far as, and again, he was a transplant. He was not born here,
Right.
but he made this his home. Naperville made him.
That's right. And there could not have been a better, bigger cheerleader for this city. In
Absolutely.
all aspects. So.
And that's why I feel terribly, terribly honored to have had him write the foreword.
Yeah. Well, I think it was perfect. So the book is put into 7 chapters.
Yes.
And I love the way you started it with, a prairie is shaped by many forces.
Yes.
And you had a wonderful quote there from May Theodore Watts, who I grew up with, and remember walking down to her house, and she had the most magnificent gardens there, which are all, and it's so funny when you think about someone like that, a world-renowned botanist, and you see her books, even in other places around the country, those guides to the trees and all sorts of things. So you started with the prairie,
Yes.
and you started with her, and then I love the way you ended the book, more flowers on the pathway of life. So I thought that was really wonderful. But 7 chapters, how did you decide to divide the history of the city into those 7 chapters? And was that difficult, trying to get everything under,
It was difficult. As a historian, one tends to tell the story chronologically, the beginning, the end, or the forewords. But what I started with, and this is the way my life and history is, things are attracted to me like a magnet. And this was the natural flow of things. First you start with prairie, and then the DuPage River that winds its way through Naperville.
Yeah.
What attracted the Native Americans? What attracted Joseph Naper? And then that last quote of the book was just pure coincidence that we start with prairies and we end with flowers. Things just work out.
Yeah. And I thought it was just such a wonderful way to start it, because we need to know what was here before any pioneer or anyone had moved in here. But it kind of reminded me a little bit, the way you started off, a little bit of James Michener, and how we would start with the dawn of time, and all those things. But I thought it was beautiful. But how, the research, and I know you've done so much research over the years, and you're such a thorough researcher, and whether it's, it's excavating something or looking at something on a site, but all the different ways in which you research history from so many different angles. What kind of research did you put into this book more than even what you had done before?
Well, having been in the profession that I was in, I dealt with a lot of libraries, a lot of archives, and a lot of primary material, a lot of photographs, diaries, and letters and things. For whatever reason, my brain is wired to remember things.
Yeah.
But when I started really after 1975, and really where Towsley left off, because the 1930s and 40s is just not a story that's told here in Naperville, I had to seek other sources. And those sources now, remarkably, in our 21st century are online. And, not to give away, my professional secrets, but newspapers.com, ancestries.com, Find a Grave. Newspapers.com is a great way to look at Naperville from outside of Naperville. So the Tribune reporters or DeKalb or the Rockford Gazette, some of those are AP stories, press stories that are going around, but it gave us the perspective of what was important to report on about Naperville.
Yeah, that's interesting. When people research, whether it's for a fiction or whether it's even for nonfiction, it's so easy to get so involved in the research. It's like just the hunt. I need to find that. Is it easy to go down the rabbit hole?
Absolutely.
And when do you stop and know, I have to sit down and write this book?
Well, my publisher gave me deadlines.
Well, that helps, right?
And but I did create outlines, and I did create forms that I kind of plunked information into and said, and if it fell out, then I either made a footnote out of it if I felt like it was important, or it just didn't make the cut.
Right. Okay, and what would you consider in all the research and all the stuff you've ever done on Naperville history is the most surprising piece that you've ever discovered or uncovered? I said.
Well, that's
literally or figuratively.
Yes. That's a hard one, and I knew you were going to ask that. I think kind of everything is incredible. I think there are things that, and again, I don't want to take away from the book itself.
Don't. No spoilers.
No spoilers.
Okay.
But I think people will be surprised how alike we are, but how unique we are to other communities.
Yeah. And I think you say that in your introduction, that we're common, but then we're uncommon, and right, those types of things. So you've done a lot of things, whether it being a college professor or being a historian, a preservationist, all those types of things. Why is preserving and learning about our history and local history especially, why is that so important to all of us?
Well, it's important because we are part of a greater family. Whether you look at it as the planet, as the continent, as the country, but if we can't get along with our neighbors, if we don't understand our history of how we came to be, either on a personal level or a community level, then we've forgotten really what civilized us in the first place.
Yeah, right. Joe Naper.
Yes.
Vast majority of the people who live here really don't know who was Joe Naper, and really what influence did he have on the future of this city. And there's always been, in the past, there were sort of conflicting views of who he really was.
Right.
So give us your impression of Joe Naper and what his influence was on what Naperville has become.
Well, I think there has been conflict as to who he was he a rogue, was he a hero, etc.
Yeah, right.
But everything that I found in the written evidence, not in oral history, but in the written evidence, is that he was not unlike any other 19th century individual who was well schooled, well trained. Whether it was in the public schools or he had private education. We really don't know a lot about his early life, but he was smart enough to know surveying, he was smart enough to sail, to build ships, to be a merchant, to conduct business, something that he carried on to his family in his sons. He was wise enough to bring people here, to give them a start in life, for them to grow their families, their businesses.
Yeah.
And I think the legacy is that when it came time to name the town, it was a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah. And when did Naperville get its name? What year was that? Do you know?
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah.
The earliest map that I was able to locate was from the Black Hawk War of 1832,
Okay.
and it just said Napier's Settlement.
Settlement. Okay.
Then the next maps that show Napiersville with an IE apostrophe S were 1842. So there's a big gap as far as what we find in the written record.
Yeah.
But they were calling it that before it was actually established. I suspect that when we became a county in 1839, it was on a county map as Naperville.
And it's, a lot of people don't know that he was a Vermont native.
As were many of
people,
the
even
first.
some of my ancestors came from Vermont. Yeah,
And
settled in here
Stephen
in
Douglas,
Illinois.
and so a lot of connection to Vermont.
Yeah, so interesting. So when we talk about the city and of course the growth and the success, what do you think he did besides starting all these things? What legacy did he leave for his sons and for future generations? Do you think?
Well, he was very influential, of course, in the first government, the village government.
Yeah.
He was elected our first
Right.
village president or mayor. So I think it was his establishment of cultural and physical place to be, place of town. I think it was his heroism, say in the Black Hawk War, or even the Mexican War, his patriotism. I think these were all models by which his sons and other members of the community looked up to. I think that there is a spirit of adventure that other Napervillians, whether they stayed here their whole life, but they might have branched out and gone on to other things. I think of Paul Serrano, the anthropologist, and discovered so many great finds in the dinosaur world.
Oh, yeah.
His family is from Naperville.
From Naperville,
He's
I
right,
grew up with him.
right downtown Naperville
right.
here. So and so many other people that have had their beginnings here, either growing up or they came to college here and got their start.
Right. So when you think of all the people that you've studied that were a part of this history, who stands out for you as the most unique or interesting? I know there's many, but are there any characters, or maybe just somebody who was a real character?
Well, I don't know. It's a theme that I'd like to explore later, but I really think that Peter Kroehler is quite the character. And those who first founded the Naperville Lounge Company, these were all either sons of immigrants or immigrants, and they came together with an idea, and it was labor. They were building something and then selling something. And right here in Naperville, and eventually Peter Kroehler joined the staff and created the world's largest upholstered furniture manufacturer.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember that whistle going off growing up. So every
and how he influenced the town. I mean, if you talk about people who influenced a town.
So what do you think, event-wise, what's happened in this city have really shaped it? Was there one particular event or something that happened that sort of turned the tide or turned the direction of where our history was going?
Absolutely. I think without a doubt, I would say that the introduction of the tech corridor, the research tech corridor. I think that Naperville had been a stagnant agricultural small town. Now, I'm not using stagnant as a negative.
No,
I'm just saying that the growth was limited. But with the decision to revitalize the area, especially north of town, and using the interstate as the corridor, I think that attracted very large businesses and very intelligent businesses, because those people who were involved in those industries became members of the school board, the library board, and they began to really influence the cultural amenities of this town.
Right. And, it's incredible when you think about all the things that have done their bit to get Naperville where it is today, whether it was the railroad coming or where, developers and the early subdivisions that started to grow, and North Central College, or like you said, Peter Kroehler, and all of that are important businesses, but the things that really helped develop our infrastructure too in this city. But they really made a difference, and there's just so much to our history that I don't know if people realize it.
They will.
Or they take it for granted.
Yes,
Let's put it that way.
right. I think
Yeah.
you're right. They take things for granted, and I really want A Brief History of Naperville to be an eye opener for those that have lived here their entire life, and I want it to be that welcome mat for those who just moved here last week.
Yeah. So, what aspects of Naperville history do you think deserve more attention? What do you think?
I really think that the 20th century needs more attention as a whole. I mean, there, like I said, the corridor came, a lot of industries came, but that was a boom to our suburbs, to our schools, to our subdivisions rather,
Right.
And to our schools, and to the activities that were recreated or were inspired during the late 70s, early 80s, the last fling, for example, and things that really wanted to bring community together.
Right. And I know you love to tell stories and tell a lot of stories about Naperville history, but which ones do you like to share the most when you're talking about Naperville?
Well, it's interesting. I'd always been A to Z type of person for events or influence of those events, but I'm really finding out, having met so many Napervillians and their families who have opened their doors to me, that I really enjoy telling the story of a particular person or a particular event in that family's history.
And the cover, I want to know.
Yes.
Did you? So a lot of authors, when it comes to cover art,
Right,
really don't have a lot of choice. But I'm assuming that you had some choice.
I had a couple requests.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of them was honored. I asked Marianne Lisson-Kuhn, local artist, if I could use her image from a limited edition print that hangs in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And I asked my partner Robert if I could use that because it's his image.
Right.
And they both agreed yes. And Marianne was very impressed that I would want to use it. But all the other images on the cover and how the layout of the book, I selected the images on the inside, about 69, 70 images.
Right, that's great.
But they chose where to put them in relation to the text and did the layout of the book.
Oh, I love the cover.
Thank you.
I really do.
Yeah.
So I want to know, what is your earliest recollection that you loved history? How old were you? And do you remember what it was that really captured your imagination thinking about what history is in the past?
I think the earliest recollection, and I was just reviewing this the other day, was Lincoln's New Salem. I grew up on both sides of my family with antiques and stories. Everything had a story. So I was definitely into history, but I definitely remember going to Lincoln's New Salem and being amazed that people could live like that.
Right.
And it really wasn't until my senior year in high school that I determined that history would be my profession.
So that's when your real passion kicked in.
The passion kicked in. In community college, I took every history course available. And my first internship was at Senator Pettigrew's house in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And to see that he built a wing of his house for a museum back in the 1890s, it was, I don't know, a light bulb went on, and I just said, this is what I want to do.
Okay. So tell us about the journey to publication and working with History Press, and was it different than what you've experienced before? And did you enjoy the whole journey and the process of getting it?
Actually, I did enjoy the journey. It was difficult, but they did make it very easy. There were deadlines. There was, of course, a contract. And I had an editor, and we went through many drafts. They had suggestions. They sent a book out, little tips for new authors type thing, or for authors. I'm sure they said new. I had self-published before in the past, or I'd published with the Peoria Historical Society. So, there I had vast resources at my fingertips until I self-published, where I laid the book out myself. And I did, of course, all the research and the imaging and all that, and then paid for it. History Press, they took care of all that. They took care of the printing and everything. So I was very pleased.
No, I love the way it came together. It's really a wonderful book. So what do you hope people are going to take away from Naperville, A Brief History? What is your hope when they read this and pick it up?
I'm really hoping that they'll connect with it. Whether they're from Naperville or not, they're going to say, oh, I remember that, or I didn't know that. And even those who live in Naperville, I really think that they'll connect to a past that they had forgotten.
Yeah. And I think they're going to learn a lot of stuff they didn't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope so.
So I'm hoping this is going to be, and I know it will be on every school library shelf in this city.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people are going to want to have it as well, because I don't think we've never had such a comprehensive history of our city. So yeah. So Bryan, I end these interviews with a little quiz.
Okay.
Now, you know, we're in a bookstore, so this is an author on his reading.
Okay.
So it's kind of a lightning round. So whatever occurs to you first, it will be your answer.
All right.
And you can't go wrong. So all answers are correct.
All right.
So, okay, what was your favorite book as a child?
Count of Monte Cristo.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. All right. How about a favorite book in high school that still stayed with you to this day?
Prayer for Owen Meany.
Oh, I love that book. Okay, how about college? Similar book.
Ooh, college. I took so many history
Well,
courses that I didn't really have a lot of novel
Yeah,
reading.
yeah.
I
Could be
couldn't even
anything.
tell
Could
you.
it even a history? What was your favorite?
Well, I took a course in Vietnamese history, and I can't remember the title of it, but it was a opening door to really what happened in Vietnam, even before America was involved.
Okay. How about a favorite historian? Do you have one?
That's interesting too.
Or even someone who writes great narrative, nonfiction like you.
Well, I have to say Erik Larson has to be right up there, and of course that's more recent.
Yeah.
But the way he tells a story using actual facts is well, and it's not really a book, but Ken Burns does an amazing job of documentaries.
Right. Sure. Okay, have you ever faked reading a book?
No.
Ooh.
No. Why would I?
No, because
Yeah.
that's a true the man who wants the facts, right?
Yeah.
But no, because most of us will say, like mine's always Ulysses, so.
Oh, right. No. Well, if someone says, "Have you written?" No. I tried.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Oh,
can't
good.
read Harry Potter. I
I'm
don't know
glad.
why,
Okay.
but
That's okay. Okay, what about a book you've been an evangelist for? You could not tell enough people they had to read it.
So, what book would I recommend?
Yeah,
Or
any book you've read that you want to tell people they have to read it.
Count of Monte Cristo. I mean, that is the book that I would take on a deserted island. I mean, there's hope, there's adventure, there's the promise of a better life.
Right.
Oh, okay, the college book, Les Miserables.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
in the
This all
practically
makes-
in the original, half of it was still in French or something, but
Wow.
it was a very old edition.
Okay. All right, and if you could have a dinner yourself and then choose 3 other authors, alive or dead, who would those 3 be?
Well, Edgar Allan Poe, William Blake, who's sort of an artist poet, and the third one, I think I would want Erik Larson.
Okay.
I just
Ooh.
want to know really what makes him tick. How does he get in there and just make it so real?
Yeah, that'd be a great conversation. Okay, I have to be a fly or some kind of bug on the wall.
Okay.
All right, and what was the last book you gave as a gift?
Oh, well, that was Bobby Fiesler's Tinderbox.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. And what are you reading now?
I am reading, actually. It's called The Black Count. And
Well, there you go.
It is about Alexandre Dumas and his father,
yeah.
and how his father, the Black Count, who influenced France during the Revolution.
Right.
So.
And that book won a lot of awards. I love that book.
And
too.
the way he starts that book, where he is in a small village in France, wants to go to their archives, but the archivist died in transit while he got there, and he didn't know if he was going to get in to see these records.
Right.
It's just an amazing adventure,
yeah.
just right off the bat.
Yeah, and that's another book that reads better than fiction.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really does.
Yeah.
Okay, 100%.
All right.
A+.
Okay.
Okay, Bryan, thank you so much for
Well,
sitting
thank
down
you,
with me. And
Becky.
congratulations. We are
Thank
so
you.
excited for
Thank
this
you.
book, and we're so glad it's finally here, and we're gonna have a great celebration tonight.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
So, great conversation with historian and expert on Naperville history, Bryan Ogg, with his brand new book. It's called Naperville, A Brief History. You've got to have this book if you love this city. Everyone should have it on their shelves. Thanks for joining me on Authors Reveal.